There's been a lot of talk circulating this offseason in regards to the potential landing spots for James Harden. James is a very polarizing player coming off an even more polarizing season in today's game. He's truly showed the highs and the lows. He's coming off a statistically great season where he averaged 21, 11, and 6 and led the NBA in assists. He's also coming off a pretty rocky playoff run, as in the first round they swept the underhanded Brooklyn Nets, and then in the second round he had two 40-point games, one of them when Joel was not even playing, versus the Boston Celtics, and there were two game winners in those two games, but then he also had two pretty fraudulent performances, and one of them was in the biggest game of the season, Game 7, ultimately causing Philly to blow a 3-2 lead in the Eastern Conference semifinals. According to Brian Windhorst of ESPN, there's appetite around the league and the NBA that James Harden could be receiving a 4-year, $200 million contract. So today's video, we're going to be talking about 4 potential landing spots for James and ultimately giving a verdict as to where he could and should potentially end up. Be sure to stick to the end because it's important that you hear about all these teams. Let me know in the comments below which you would like to see most. First and foremost, the one I'm seeing pushed, the agenda I'm seeing pushed the most, even after acquiring the 4th pick in the draft, is a potential reunion in Houston. I'm kind of on the fence about this decision because Houston already has a ton of young talent at the guard position, and James said one of the biggest aspects of him making his decision going forward in free agency was going to be finding a place that's not only competitive, but where he has the basketball freedom to do whatever he wants. Not only will Houston not be super competitive, but if James is brought in, this could potentially act as a potential slow down for young guys like Jalen and Kevin. Yes, he could help them and act as a mentor, but there's been a various different occasions of people saying that James is a great teammate and or saying that James is just a locker room cancer. So it's really hard to pinpoint how he'd treat these young guys on this team. There's no doubt that his days in Houston were special. I mean, there was multiple 60-win seasons. They're potentially one Chris Paul injury away from stopping the Kevin Durant Golden State Warriors. One of the saddest moments for all Houston fans, my bad. But to be honest with you, every single team in Houston was tailored to fit his play style and skill set. James, the last few seasons in Philly, has been transcending his game into somewhat of a pass-first guy who doesn't look to dominate the scoring numbers. Does that change if he goes back to Houston? Do we see him try to revert into his old ways? Does him signing with Houston make them a contender? I don't think so, and I also think that there's too many questions, which is why I'm not really a big fan of a Houston reunion. Re-signing with Philadelphia would be interesting because James pretty much got Doc Rivers fired, and the two-man game between Joel and James some nights looks absolutely unstoppable. Their chemistry together has been definitely taking leaps and bounds. I guess I like the idea of them continuing to play together if Harden wants to stick with the pass-first mindset. However, I wouldn't be upset if the 76ers just traded Harris, Maxey, and maybe even Embiid, and then let Harden walk and just restart the process. It's getting to the point where Joel doesn't have the best playoff track record, and James definitely doesn't either, and they're spending so much money to have the same result every single season. The best chance this Philadelphia team has had something to do beyond the second round was when they blew the series in Atlanta and ended up losing in 7 games to Trae Young and the Hawks in the Eastern Conference semifinals, and even then, James was not a part of that team. Since then, it does seem that Joel simply vanishes in some of the biggest playoff moments. So no, I'm not a big fan of Harden going back to Philly, but if it were to happen, I would say there would need to be some roster reconstruction, and I guess that they could try it again, but if it were to happen, I'd love to see it on a 2-year, not a 4-year contract. However, as James ages, I know that he wants the financial security, which makes this all too tricky. Which is why the next 2 teams would be my favorite landing spots for James. The Phoenix Suns would be a lot of fun. We've now seen James and Kevin play together twice in their careers, and both times they made it or almost made it to the NBA Finals. In Brooklyn, James was pretty much playing on one leg as he was nursing that crazy hamstring injury, so the series against the Bucks will just dismiss that. This Phoenix Suns team badly needs a point guard who can facilitate and stay healthy, and honestly, Chris just just isn't that guy anymore. We've seen a lot of reports that he will not be the starting point guard on this team come next season. If you bring James in and some great 3-and-D guys paired with a center who can defend and catch lobs and the starting five, James, Book, KD, Torrey Craig, Josh Okogie, and some other people would make this roster really great. It's just a question of, can Matt Ishbia, I believe that's how you pronounce his last name, the new Suns GM, make those moves? This, to me, gives James the best chance of staying competitive while also having some basketball freedom. Yes, Kevin and Devin will be taking more shots and having a higher usage rating than him, but he'll still be able to dominate second units or facilitate the starting five. We saw Brooklyn James was still able to rattle off some 40-point nights, and we even saw he was in some MVP conversations during the majority of this season together with James, Kyrie, and KD. Another super team would be pretty fun to watch in the regular season, honestly, especially come playoff time. It's always fun to watch a David try to slay a Goliath. However, with how the conferences are shaping out, with Jimmy and Jokic leading their teams to victory with no other All-Stars on paper, it's interesting to see the dynamic switch from talented rosters to chemistry culture rosters with loyal and talented coaching. The last team to me that would be pretty fun to watch for James would be the Washington Wizards. I know this is kind of random, but it just seems like a Wizards thing to do. Go off and signing an aging James Harden for 4 years, $200 million. Trying to compete, if you will. James would for sure have basketball freedom to do almost whatever he wants. And if Kuzma ended up staying, they would actually have a pretty good team on paper with Bradley Beal, James Harden, Kyle Kuzma, Kristaps Porzingis, Danny Avdija off the bench. It's a much smaller market, which I'm not sure is James's style, but it would definitely be interesting to watch Washington be a little bit competitive. I mean, they've been a bottom feeder and a borderline 8 seed, it feels like, for the last 4 or 5 years, ever since John was injured and out the door. The last time, aside from the John Wall Bradley Beal era, that this team was even remotely somewhat barely competitive, I say it with that many adjectives and or adverbs, because it's true that nobody thought they would go far, was when Russell Westbrook and Bradley Beal were together. It was a 1-year stint and a little bit of fun, but if you're going to go out and try to make a splash in free agency, James definitely might be your guy, as they could use someone who could facilitate next to such an elite and talented scorer like Bradley Beal. Obviously, Bradley's game is one that gets a little bit underrated due to the fact that he is in Washington and nobody outside of the Washington fans pays much attention to him. But like I said, the starting five would be really great. It's just a matter of if James's team and the Wizards would be, open to the idea of this. What do you guys think? Where should James end up? Why should he end up there? Let me know in the comments below. If you made it this far, appreciate your support as always. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Stay happy, healthy, and blessed. Peace.